The film begins with a group of young people saying goodbye to their relatives because they were going to enter the police academy. At the academy, they cut their hair and explain that they will first go through a 2-week military training. They start with the exercises, and at dinner we meet our protagonists. First, we see Ki-jun asking for an extra sausage, but they refuse. He goes to a table and there he meets Hee-yeol, who does not eat his sausage since he considers it harmful to health. Hearing this, Ki-jun ends up eating the sausage. 2 weeks later, as a final test, they are ordered to climb a mountain and return in less than an hour. They are told that those who fail will not be admitted. They all start running, but on the way, Hee-yeol falls down and injures his leg. He asks his classmates for help, but no one helps him until Ki-jun arrives. Hee-yeol reminds Ki-jun that he invited him his sausage and tells him that if he helps him he will buy him beef. Ki-jun agrees and carries Hee-yeol all the rest of the way. Upon arrival, his instructor asks them what happened and they tell her everything. The instructor asks the classmates if what the boys say is true and they answer yes, so the instructor orders the others to climb the mountain again as punishment for not having helped an injured person when that is the duty of a police officer. 2 years later, we see our protagonists on a normal school day. That day, the subject of the class was kidnapping and their teacher explained to them about the critical hours, which are the hours in which the victim is most likely to die. In the case of women, the critical hours were 7 hours after the abduction. Then, we see them in their self-defense class and afterwards talking about their plans for Christmas. The day of Christmas comes and they go to a club. There, they decide to separate to meet girls, but no one pays attention to them. Disappointed, they go to a restaurant and upon leaving it, they see a young woman who catches their attention, so they decide to follow her to ask for her number. To decide who will do it, they play rock, paper, and scissors. However, as they do so, a car appears and a group of men kidnap the young woman. They call the police and tell them that they witnessed a kidnapping. They give them the license plate to track the car, but it turns out to be fake. So as not to waste any more time, Ki-jun and Hee-yeol go to the nearest police station to file a complaint. But just at that moment, all the members of the Missing People Division go out in search of a millionaire's granddaughter. Although Hee-yeol reminds one of the detectives of the critical hours, he tells them to wait at the police station and leaves. The boys know that when the detective returns, it will be too late, so they decide to look for the young woman on her own. Since they do not have the resources to start the search, they decide to go to the place of the kidnapping. There, they find the bag that the victim was carrying, which contains food, and since it is a food that is eaten instantly, they conclude that it was bought at a nearby place. So they go to the nearby stores to show them the food and ask if they prepared it. They go through many stalls until they reach the correct one, there they ask the owner about the missing young woman. She tells them that the young woman buys recurrently at midnight. They ask her if she knows where she lives, and she tells them that she doesn't, but that she does know where she works and tells them her place. Upon arrival, they realize that the workplace is not so legal, so they play rock, paper, and scissors to choose who will enter. Hee-yeol ends up losing, so he goes in, while Ki-jun stands guard outside. In front of him, he sees a man eating noodles and sausage. He doesn't resist anymore and decides to stand guard from that place. Once inside, Hee-yeol is attended by a woman who cleans his ear, and while he begins to ask about the kidnapped girl. There he discovers that the young woman is called Yoon, that she is 17 years old, and that she lives with a group of friends who, like her, have run away from her houses. On the other hand, a police car arrives at the scene, and to prevent them from entering, Ki-jun insults them and the police start chasing him. Finally, Hee-yeol manages to get the address of the place where the girl lives. At that moment, he runs into Ki-jun and they both run away. Arriving at the house, a man attends to them, but when they ask him about Yoon, he starts running. Hee-yeol and Ki-jun start chasing after him, and using his self-defense skills, they manage to catch him in a parking lot. There, they interrogate him, and the boy confesses that he sold Yoon to a man named Gun-ho, but he doesn't know what they will do with her. He hands them the card Gun-ho gave him with his address on it, and tells them that Gun-ho pays well for young people who have run away from home. After leaving him stuck to a wall with a tape that Ki-jun had bought, they return to Yoon's house to warn the other young women about what happened. They bring them food and ask them questions about Yoon. There, they find out that Yoon ran away from her house because her stepfather beat her all the time. The girls ask them to rescue her friend, and they promise they will. Then, they give them money to go to a safer place to sleep and tell them that they will call them when they find Yoon. Later, they both take a taxi to the place indicated on the card. On the way, they talk about the information they have collected and realize that the victims were perfect targets for the kidnappers, since being people who ran away from home, nobody reports them as missing or searches for them. On the other hand, we see the victim, who is given an injection while a man creates a student card with her photo. Our protagonists arrive at the place, which turns out to be a restaurant in a somewhat dangerous Chinatown. There, they meet a group of men, so they pretend to be diners, and using the cell phone of the boy they left glued to the wall, they call Gun-ho. Once they identify him, they hang up the call. However, Gun-ho calls them and their cell phone starts ringing, so Gun-ho and his men approach and our pair ends up confronting them. Our protagonists emerge victorious and take Gun-ho, who indicates the place where they are holding Yu-young. To their surprise, they find more women who are locked up in small rooms. As Hee-yeol begins to inspect, Ki-jun gets Gun-ho to talk and Gun-ho confesses what they do to women. They manage to open one of the doors and find a young woman with a fever and bleeding, so they decide to take her to the hospital first and return with more police. However, when they are about to leave, Gun-ho's accomplices arrive. Hee-yeol tries to confront them while Ki-jun escapes, but the gang boss arrives and ends up defeating Hee-yeol. Ki-jun realizes that he is at a dead end and returns to help Hee-yeol. He confronts the boss, however he ends up knocking him out. Waking up he realizes they are tied up and dangling, so he swings to untie the rope and then, he picks up Hee-yeol. They both get dressed and open the door to go out, only to find that the men are asleep. Carefully, they begin to walk among the men, until Ki-yoon's watch rings indicating that 7 hours had already passed. The alarm wakes the men up, so Hee-yeol and Ki-yoon run and leave the place. The men go after them, and the boss chases after them with his minivan. Our pair manages to reach a police station, so the men return to take the girls elsewhere. Upon entering, our pair tells the police about what happened, however, he asks for their IDs. They tell him that they took them, but the police tells them that without their IDs, he won't be able to help them. Ki-yoon gets upset and insults him and the policeman ends up handcuffing them. They call his teacher, and once he shows his ID to the cop, our pair is released. They tell their teacher that there are women locked up in a building where they get their human eggs. Together, they go to the place, and their teacher tells them that a woman produces 1 human egg per month, but the kidnappers inject them with a drug to produce 20. And once they have the human eggs, they contact infertile couples and sell them. They arrive at the place, but there is no one there. As the case is very big, their professor tells them that the regional unit will be contacted to investigate the case, but this could take 2 weeks. Hee-yeol reminds his teacher that, in kidnapping cases, time is essential, however their teacher tells them that there are more cases, and they are all important. They ask if they can take on the case, but their professor tells them that they are still students. At that, Hee-yeol tells him that he saw the license plate of the car and gives it to him. The professor calls an acquaintance to track the car, however it turns out to be an unregistered car, so it must be tracked by video surveillance cameras, but for that a detective must make the request. So in the end they go back to school and their teacher tells them not to get involved in the case anymore or they will be expelled. Already at school, they remember they know a police officer at the video surveillance center, since she is the police officer who trained them in their first 2 weeks. They call her and Ki-jun tells her as a personal matter what happened and asks her to help him track the car. The police agree and ask for the car's information. After that, our pair goes to the manager and asks him for everything they need, telling him that a teacher sends them. They start training for several days until they get the call from the police. She tells them that the truck was seen twice on the same street, and that on those 2 occasions, a car with the name of Fertility Clinic H was following it. The boys look for it online and find its hours of operation and its location. There, it says that it will be closed the following Sunday, so they deduce the human eggs will be extracted from the young women that day. Next, we see a doctor closing a deal with a married couple for the fertilization process with Yu-young's eggs. He shows them her photo and tells them that Yu-young is a student who has donated her eggs to support herself financially. Sunday arrives, and the men take the girls to Clinic H. Hee-yeol and Ki-jun also arrive at the scene and begin to confront the men. Finally, they manage to defeat them and enter the clinic. There, they ask the cleaning lady for the operating room, and she tells them that it is on the 8th floor. They go up the elevator, but as soon as the doors open, they are attacked by the boss. After a long fight, they manage to beat him and handcuff him. In pain, they arrive at the operating room and stop the doctor. Then, they find the other girls and decide to call their teacher, even when it means getting expelled. Later, we see a meeting of police officers discussing our protagonists to decide if they should be expelled or not. But finally, they give the last word to their teacher, who allows them to stay, since they did the right thing. The movie ends with Yu-young going to visit them at the university and hugging them in gratitude.